Hello everyone. So my story is about my adventures in the amazing world of financing new businesses and startups. It starts with 3 questions. What if you had a brilliant idea, but not enough money to make it real? And what if somebody else had all the money in the world, but no such ideas? What would happen if you two became connected? So yes, this is also about connecting the dots. Financial markets connect ideas and money. Companies or firms wanting to implement their project acquire funding from investors, either directly or actually more often through intermediaries such as banks. Of course, this is not free money. Investors and banks expect to be paid back with profitability levels corresponding to the risk levels they are taking. But the magic now is that those ideas, those great ideas, are transformed into real-life projects, real-life products, and real-life services. Sometimes we see epic failures too. It is the nature of the beast. My first slide shows only commercial actors, investors with money, firms with ideas and projects, and intermediaries such as banks. There are others too. But this is not the whole picture. Every country has public institutions that supplement the market. I used to work for Finnvera for almost 20 years. And Finnvera finances actually thousands of startups every year, together with banks. Germany has the huge state-owned KfW bank, and German lender have public guarantee banks. I will talk about them later. I won't be able to discuss every aspect in a short time. I will rudely skip large businesses. I will concentrate on startups, and especially small startups. If you are to launch a business of your own one day, if you already haven't, what kind of a company will that be? I like to think that there are 2 main types of startups, and they are very different. Their financing needs and their financing sources are very different. The first type is what I call conventional businesses. By conventional, I mean that there are similar companies already out there. The market rules are known, and the business models are clear. It could be a cafe, a restaurant, a gym, a design or service company, an accounting firm, just to mention a few examples. There are many, many others. Of course, these kinds of companies face a lot of competition because there are others that offer similar services. But the good news is that if you excel at what you do, it's probable that you are able to reach the average profitability levels of your business branch. And because these markets are quite stable, they don't change so rapidly, it is then possible that you can continue with your business for a long time, even for decades. Usually, these kinds of companies need less than 100,000 to start. Some need only a few thousand to buy a laptop. Of course, there are also large cases, but most of the companies like this initially employ only 1 or 2 persons. Where does the money come from to start? There is an old wisdom. This is partly a joke, but there is much truth in it, that there is a group called 3F. It stands for friends, family, and fools. 3F 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 stands for friends, family, and fools. Especially small startups or solo businesses are often started with money from this group. But if your 3F group cannot afford as much as you need, the next alternative is, of course, banks. The bank will, of course, conduct a creditworthiness and risk assessment of your idea, and the bank will require collateral. For example, if you own a house, it's probable that the bank will ask for it to be used as collateral, and you will have your skin in the game. Right. Luckily, I mentioned those public guarantee banks. Finnvera is also one of those in Finland, but you have these in Germany, many of them. And up to 80%, they can offer guarantees that substitute for the collateral required by the bank. So you need the bank, you need a public guarantee bank, and of course you also need some equity. You may have to borrow personally to have that equity. By the way, the terminology I'm using intentionally applies to limited liability companies, but similar principles are valid for other company types. In Finland, we are lucky to have 4F. We have Friends, Family, Fools, and Finnvera. There are alternative sources, like quick tip offers. Even some banks offer products like this. They don't ask for collateral, but they ask for a very, very high interest rate instead. It can be 10% or more. Be very careful with these ones. I've seen many sad examples where this is poison for the business if you are not very, very profitable soon enough. So I suggest that you explore all the three first options before considering these expensive ones. Now the other type, of course, if one type is conventional, then the other type is something that I call innovative businesses. And these are often based on university research. Not always, but often. Now these kind of startups have potential for growth, even international growth. Perhaps the company is trying to create a market instead of entering one. Needless to say, but I say it anyway, that this means that there are risks. You are entering a world that nobody else has entered before. Usually a team establishes companies like this. Banks seldom finance this kind of companies because even if collateral is there, the cash flow with which the loan should be paid back is not visible. There is some lottery element still there. Will you succeed or will you not? Therefore, equity financing becomes an essential option. Frequently, several hundred thousands are needed, even much more sometimes. Now it's very important to understand that equity and debt are very, very different, both for the financier and for the company. Equity is the primary buffer against potential losses. If, for example, your product development has delays, your equity investor might lose the money entirely. But if the company becomes very successful, then the equity investor has huge upside because the shares have become very valuable. The debt financier, on the other hand, has no upside over being paid back the loan plus interest. But in an unfortunate bankruptcy situation, the debt financier has a senior position and can call on the collateral. The key word here is predictability. Even if your profitability level is low or limited, but it's stable, it's predictable, you can use a loan to finance your business. And even if you have the whole world out there, but there is still technology risk or market risk between you and your success, you should use equity. Don't use a loan too early in these cases. So, where do you find equity? And what do they look? They will look into your eyes, of course, but what else? What else? They are interested, if it is a tech company, how promising that technology is. Is it verified enough? Can the intellectual property rights be protected? You need a team. You need a team to implement the product and sell it. My experience is that the most difficult part for these companies is to understand the market, especially if you're trying to create one. I have heard so many wannabe startups say that my product is so unique that there won't be any competition. Now that is a danger sign. There is always competition. There are substitute solutions for your customer. Or who is going to be your customer? Why is he or she going to buy your product? One way to manage these kinds of risks is to develop the product together with your first customers. Another one is to use coaches who already understand the market so that you don't have to learn it the hard way. And finally, all of this must be expressed in numbers in your business plan. The business plan is your primary communication tool with your potential financiers. And now, if you have external investors, now the huge question is, what is the value of your company? If the valuation is too low, your ownership will dilute more than is necessary. But if the valuation is too high, misaligned with reality, your next financing rounds, your later financing rounds may become very, very problematic. So what is the correct valuation? It's basically the future cash flows discounted to this moment. This is called DCF, discounted cash flow. And yes, it is theoretically the correct valuation. The problem with innovative companies, though, is that those future cash flows are not really known. They are guesses. So I recommend always that an independent expert should be used to help when valuating your company, when you are inviting investors. The way forward, if you need debt, and if you can use debt, I have already said that don't use it too early if you are developing an innovative company. Remember 3F group. If that is not enough, contact your bank. As for equity, there are associations and public organizations which can be useful information sources. Universities have contact points for entrepreneurs and some advice service usually. And one possibility is to participate in a startup event. For a long time we have had one in Finland, it's called Slush. Nobody in their right mind would come to Helsinki in November because of the weather. But because of the Slush event, many badasses actually do. I'm not connected with the event, but I've participated many times, and I'm sure that Germany has similar huge events. Finally, talking about new startups is always a hot topic. But remember that there is an attractive alternative, which is to buy an existing business. It is actually much less risky than developing a new one from scratch. Of course, you need financing to buy somebody else's business. And again, correct valuation is crucial. It's time for a summary. To establish a conventional business, you need some equity, and you can use a loan. To create and develop an innovative business, you need primary equity. Avoid taking a company loan before your cash flow, your income is visible. Of course, the world is more complex than this. There are financial instruments that combine some features of equity and debt. But I am standing between you and the lunch now, so I won't go into that. Basically, they're just hybrid combinations of them. In my talk, I have tried to describe the viewpoints of both financiers and firms. Why? Over the years, I have sat on both sides of the table, and I have learned something. Overall, and above all, financing is a trust business. You need to understand each other, the firm and the financier. You need to respect, you need to trust each other. Because opportunities do not come without risks. You might have to face some tough times in the future. But when based on trust and open communications, financial relationships can find solutions and create fantastic stories. So if you are an aspiring entrepreneur or investor, I hope I said something that in a tiny way can help you make your vision come true. Good luck. Thank you.